Hey, everybody, it's Bernie Gallerani, and I'm bringing you another episode of Success is Not Convenient. I'm excited about the guest that we have here today. I've been excited about talking with this guy and for the stuff that he's able to do to help other people achieve the goals that they have, going in depth in how the process of people's brains work. And so this gentleman is an exceptional person to learn from. So let me just read a little bit about Danny. Danny Brassell is a highly sought after speaker. He's a trainer and a coach, and he's known kind of as the Jim Carrey with a PhD. A fun, amazing guy. He has spoken to over 3,500 audiences worldwide and has authorized over 20 books, including The Leadership Begins with Motivation. I love that. Misfits and Crackpots. I love that. The co-founder of The Well-Crafted Story, Danny helps entrepreneurs, individuals, and organizations leverage speaking on stage as a major client lead source that converts. So I want to say thank you, Mr. Danny, for showing up and sharing all of your great insight with us today. Here we go. Well, Danny, I got to tell you, I'm so excited. Thank you for joining us here on Success is Not Convenient. And boy, I'll tell you what, you've got some really great accolades and a lot of really cool stuff that has gone on in your life and the things that you've done. And I am really looking forward to not only hearing what you have to say today, but to also all the people who watch this and listen to this to get a lot of value from what it is that you do. So if you don't mind, Danny, please share with our group. Tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of what you do, and let's see if we can help some people today.
Perfect. Sounds great. And thanks so much for having me, Bernie. And more importantly, thanks for spreading some joy in the world. We need a lot more of you, my friend. If I was going to write an autobiography, it'd probably be called Pivots, because I feel like I've already lived 9 lives. 30 years ago, I was a journalist covering President Bush Sr. in the 1992 presidential election. I loved my job. I got to meet every editor of every major daily. And one editor offered me the City Beat for $16,500 a year. Meanwhile, a friend told me they were hiring teachers in South Central Los Angeles for $25,000 a year. So I became an educator for the noblest of reasons, Bernie, for the high pay. And I actually fell in love with teaching. I've taught all age levels, from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can actually make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the University of Southern California. And in 2005, my wife and I attended a real estate seminar, which turned out to be a scam, and we lost everything financially. And I could give you the woe is me story, but I'm a positive person. I learned a lot from that experience. First of all, I learned my wife is my soulmate. I put her through the ringer, and she stood right by me. She's an incredible human being. Secondly, I learned that money's not everything, because you can lose money just like that. Third, I try not to judge other people, because if I was somebody who saw what I had done, I would have said, well, you deserve that. But now I realize unless you know everything about a person, you really don't know anything about a person. Fourth, I became a Christian, which I'm always embarrassed to confess. It took a catastrophe, but the more I read my Bible, I realize I'm not the first screw up to find Jesus. And then fifth, I didn't want to file bankruptcy, and my accountant said, well, you have to earn this much more money this year. And so I started speaking on the side, and I hit that number right on the number. Well, the next year, Bernie, he gave me a much higher number, and I hit that number right on the number. So in year 3, I thought, well, maybe I should set a higher number. And basically, during one of the worst economic downturns in American history, I was able to build up a highly lucrative speaking business, which eventually attracted the attention of some pretty famous people and companies who asked me to coach them. And I have to be honest, I resisted coaching for a long time, Bernie, because you need to know this about me. I'm obsessive compulsive. I will not let you fail. I will be on your back, holding you accountable until you succeed. But now that I work primarily with entrepreneurs and business owners and executives, I find that they're highly motivated. They do the work, and it's probably been the most satisfying, fulfilling work I've ever done. So we can go down whichever path you choose, Bernie.
Well, I first of all, that's so much adversity that you've had to continue to keep going through. Talk to me a little bit about your real estate, because you said you lost everything through the real estate. Tell me a little bit about the despair of that, where you were feeling, how you were feeling about all that, because you obviously had great hopes, as all of our listeners do when they're business owners. You get into something you're probably excited about, and I'm just making an assumption here, Danny, and then all of a sudden that comes crumbling down. Let's talk, if you can, a little bit about that.
I choose to focus on the positive about it, Bernie. It was really good for me because it taught me humility. I thought I was all that, and I wasn't. It's interesting. My wife, when she married me, she had 2 reservations about me. One, I was tight with money, and second of all, I wasn't Christian. And isn't it interesting? It took this experience to make me a Christian, and I'm no longer tight with money. I realize money's just a tool. But I know that there's a lot of listeners out there that might be hurting, and I think it's really important for them to understand that you need those dark valleys to enjoy the bright peaks. And it gave me a lot of empathy for other human beings, which was really important. So, I know some people that get stuck in that story. I use that as the catapult to take me to higher places.
It's interesting. You talk about going down in that valley. And of course, I think any entrepreneur or any business or any person really, I think, gets into that valley a little bit. And then how do they get out of it? And I know you do a lot of speaking and do a lot of different things. And you've been on stage trying to share your story with others and your mindset. What pulled you from being in the valley of despair and then realizing that you just need to keep moving forward?
Well, a wife and two kids at the time, now three. I need to get my act together, and I'm a person that believes in action, and so I started speaking everywhere. People say, "Oh, how do I start?" I'm like, "Well, you just start. You got to get going." And so even when I speak for free, I've always had people sign a letter of agreement with me. And so when I first started out, my letter of agreement would say, I will waive my $5,000 speaking fee. I wasn't making $5,000, but I said, I will waive my $5,000 speaking fee in exchange for, and I had 10 items on the list. It was items like, one, a video testimonial from your organization's president. Two, 3 written testimonials from people in your audience. 3, 2 referrals to other organizations that could benefit from my speaking. 4, if you're videotaping me, I want a copy of the tape. 5, if you have a monthly newsletter, I want to be able to write a monthly column for the next year. I don't remember all 10 of them, but I was fascinated because I didn't know if anybody would do any of them. Well, everybody did at least one of them, and some people did all 10 of them. And what that did for me, Bernie, is it helped me really build up my speaking credibility. I'm working with a woman right now, and she told me she wants to be a $10,000 an hour speaker. And so I asked her, I'm like, well, do you look like a $10,000 an hour speaker? And she said, what do you mean? I'm like, well, do you have a website? No. Do you have a speaking reel? No. Do you have video testimonials from past clients? No. Do you have a brochure? No. So let me ask you, are you a $10,000 an hour speaker? You have to look the part.
Yeah, that reminds me of a couple of books that I have read in my last, I would say, 20 or so years. One of them is a book by Darrell Rutherford called Being the Solution, and he talks about, just kind of piggybacking off of what you just said, and I don't know if you've read that book or not, but he talks about the order of the do, have, be mentality. And he goes into saying that it's not really a do, have, be, it's really a be, do, have mentality. In that, just what you said, how do you plan on making a $10,000 check of a speaking engagement if you aren't the person who shows up that says I'm worth the $10,000 speaking engagement? And so I've learned a lot from all of the order of that thing. And it's like, you have to be in your mind the person first before you'll ever do the activity, which is the do side, before you'll ever achieve the things that a $10,000 engagement speaker actually has. So it's really kind of a being situation more than a doing situation. Would you agree?
Completely agree, Bernie. I'm a Baptist in your front row saying, "Amen." Be it. Like you got to be the part. I read Michael Caine's autobiography on acting, and so he would go to where all the agents were. He wasn't getting gigs, and he said, "I have to be memorable," and so he bought these really thick rimmed glasses. And all of a sudden he started getting gigs because casting directors are like, oh, who was the guy with the thick rimmed glasses? I thought that was hilarious. He didn't need them, but it helped him stand out. It's like, what are you doing? What's your shtick? What makes you stand out from all the other people in the herd?
It's so fun. About 20 years ago, when I got into my mentorship in the real estate world that I live in, he had asked me some series of questions just like that. And he said, well, if you were to say your ultimate person, like if in the world of real estate, if you were a super successful realtor, what does that person look like? And he had me go through what kind of clothes would I wear, what kind of car would I drive, how much money would I have in the bank, how many people would I have, and how would they respect me and look at me, what kind of leader would I be, what kind of father would I be, what kind of husband would I be, What does my community see in me? So he had me do these visualizations, Danny. And at the end of the question, now remember, I'm brand new. I don't probably didn't have any money at that particular point. And he said to me, is that person you just envisioned you
Mm.
today? And of course, my answer was no. And he says, well, it'll never be you unless you put this in your mind first and act in the manner that the person you described, because it just doesn't show up unless you're that person first. So that was a huge lesson. And so I changed how I looked at everything. I went out and bought a little nicer car, even though I really couldn't afford it. I got a little nicer clothes as I couldn't afford it. So I guess what I'm hearing you say about this particular individual, and probably within your own life, is you just had to act that way first.
Absolutely. Well, and especially in real estate, you know this, having a niche is very important. I mean, I have a friend, and she's really smart. Her niche is divorced couples. So she focuses only on divorced couples for real estate. And so people refer, when they have friends that get divorced, which is unfortunately too high of a statistic in America, but it's a lot of people. That's a really good niche. I have another friend, and he specializes in. You'll know this better than me, Bernie. It's the what is it, Section 8? It's the military housing. He really focuses on for veterans, and that's his specialty. Probably the greatest real estate trainer ever was Tom Hopkins, and I mean, I used to just I'd watch his speech again and again because he's hilarious. He talks about the very
Yeah,
first
he's got a good
yeah,
personality.
the very first client he ever got. He's like in a beat up Subaru and it breaks down. I'm like, it goes to what you're saying is like, hey, if you're going to be taking your potential clients out to look at homes, maybe you should have a nicer looking car. Maybe you should vacuum it and clean it before, when my wife and I were looking for houses in Colorado, one of the realtors, she took us in her car and there was like baby vomit and a baby. I'm like, cleaned your car, man. Like we didn't use her for very long. It took one day of that. And again, Tom Hopkins, he has great advice. He said, I'm not judged on the number of times I fail, but on the number of times I succeed. And the number of times I succeed is directly related to the number of times I fail. That is a wonderful saying. It's absolutely right.
That is such a great segue into the question I wanted to ask you, and all the speaking, the people you get a chance to talk with and inspire, and I get a chance to do those things too. So I have a little bit of an experience. I don't speak like you do, but I do get a chance to get on stage and have good conversations about certain topics. And so my question is, what is it, the one thing when you get to meet all these people that goes on inside of their head that you see in them that they don't see in them? Because they're probably giving you reasons why they can't do something. What is, if I was to say to you, hey, Danny, I got this thing going on. I got this business. I'm struggling right now, and I just don't know how to get out of what it is that I'm doing. I don't know how to kind of go to the next level. What kind of things can you share with me or share with people who are listening to help inspire me to keep moving forward?
Well, this is one thing I know you and I both believe in, Bernie. You need a mentor. You need a coach. I mean, this goes back to my old teaching days. I used to always look at my students and say, sometimes you need somebody else to believe in you before you believe in yourself. I believe in all of you. They only give me the best and the brightest. Let's go make this world a better place. I said that every single day to my students. I believe, there's a great speaker he's passed on, unfortunately, Keith Harrell. He used to say, a lot of people say garbage in, garbage out. He's like, that's wrong. Garbage in, garbage stays. You tell a person they're worthless enough, they start believing it. But the alternative is also real. You tell a person they're going to do it enough, they start believing it. I've been blessed with lots of coaches and mentors throughout my life, plus 2 great parents that really got me believing that I could do anything. And so for those people that doubt themselves, I mean, this is exactly when I co-founded a speaking company with Coach Jimmy Hayes Nelson and Dave Ward. I call us the professor, the performer, and the producer because my background's in academia. Coach Jimmy was a Broadway actor, and Dave is an attorney. And so we take our clients through this process. Forgive me, Bernie. Former teacher, everything I do either rhymes or it's alliterative. So we call it the 5 C's process. And so when we're putting together a presentation, we need clarity. And then once we have clarity, then we actually get into the bones, which is to connect with an audience, teach meaningful content that helps them, have one clear call to action, and have an emotional close that gets them stampeding to work with you. If you can do those things, you're going to do a great job. So here's an exercise everybody in your audience can do who's wondering, well, what can I do to connect with people? Later on, find a comfortable chair, get a pen and paper, libation of choice, And for an hour, I want you to write down every story that's ever happened to you. And I don't mean the entire story, I just mean triggers. Like the time I locked myself out of the car in front of Costco, the time Dad spilt mustard on his tie when we went to that fancy restaurant. You'll find in an hour you can come up with several hundred stories just like this. So that's the first part of the exercise. The second part of the exercise is then I want you to think about, well, what's this story really about? Oh, this is a story about never giving up. Oh, this is a story about loyalty. Oh, this is a story about paying attention. And so on my computer, I have hundreds of files with literally tens of thousands of stories. So when I'm putting together a presentation and I want my audience to have a very specific reaction, I know the story that's going to produce this. This is very important. This is a key point. There are really good speakers out there, and then there are great speakers. And the difference is the good speakers tell stories. The great speakers tell stories with intention. They're moving their audience to take the next step with them. Now, it can be an unpaid next step, like subscribe to my podcast or vote for me. It can be a paid next step. More typically it is like buy my product or invest in my coaching program with me. But the only way I evaluate your effectiveness when you're on stage is how many people in your audience chose to take that next step with you. And the reason, and this is something I want your listeners to understand, your viewers to understand, is you can serve your audience a little bit when you're on stage for an hour. You can serve them a lot more with a much more ongoing relationship, like a coaching arrangement, or I'm going to become your realtor, or I'm your mentor. That's how you really affect people long term.
It's interesting because, you know, I find, and I don't, because I'm not a professional speaker in that way, and I get asked a lot of questions in the world that I live in, the businesses that we run, and I'm always challenged with trying to get into somebody's, the way they think, like, because I'm a believer, Danny, that you can do anything you want to do. And the only one that stands in the way of you doing something that you want to do is really just you. And so you have this desire of this dream of saying, I want to accomplish this. But then in the way of that is you, your conditional thinking, your behavior activity, maybe part of that. And I was on a podcast, just like maybe Monday. What's today? I think it was Monday. And they were talking about go back and look in your life and ask yourself, why did I choose to think this way? What part of your life caused you to think that way? Can you elaborate a little bit, kind of your thoughts on that?
Well, I like that strategy a lot. It's really kind of a speaking strategy. If there's one strategy I share with people all the time, and you're exactly the type of person I work with, Bert. I have worked with professional speakers, but most of the people I work with, they're either terrified of being on stage or they don't see the value in it. They see the value once we start working on their stories together, like, oh, whoa. And then they start expanding their definition of stages. So I would argue to you that this podcast is a remarkable stage. And it drives Coach Jimmy, my business partner, crazy that I go on so many podcasts. He's like, only one person watches that podcast. And I'm like, I don't care how many. I just care who. You have no idea. If you have one viewer and it's the President of the United States, that's not a bad audience. It's the truth.
Well,
I completely.
Well,
go for it, Bernie.
We want to change lives one person at a time,
Yeah.
right? We agree on that?
Yes, absolutely.
And so I had something very interesting happen to me on an interview that I was in yesterday. And this person came in, works inside my company, but comes in, she goes, you're not going to believe the story. I said, okay, lay it on me. She says, my mom works down the street, and this guy who sprays for bugs sprays this building, which is like a mile from here, let's just say. It's not much more than about a mile from here. And she starts telling the people in this office, or he does, I should say, that he sprays bugs in this building down the road, and that we do a gratitude circle in the morning to say what we're grateful for. Now, this is talking about changing one life at a time. You don't know who it impacts. It impacts people that you don't even know it impacts. And as you and I do our work, our job is just to impact one person. Yeah. Whoever hears it, just one person making a change. We could have 10,000 people see it. One person makes a change, and all these videos are worth it. I think you would agree to that, correct? Yeah. And so he starts telling this lady who doesn't know that her own daughter works inside this building, that there's this building down the road, and they do this gratitude circle, and he's talking about us because he's also our bug man. And that he comes in every month and he sprays for bugs inside of our building. And he says they do this gratitude about how become grateful. And he said, I started thinking, why am I not more grateful and think about things that I'm grateful for? He says, and all of that, it caused me to start praying. And then it caused me to wonder about my spiritual direction. And then it caused me to start attending my local church. And then it allowed me to be saved by our great Lord Jesus Christ. And so she tells me this story yesterday. And I'm like, sometimes you just live your life and you have no idea who's watching you. And if just one person can take an impact from 10,000 people watching it, and one person changes their life for the better from videos like this, this is the only thing that really matters. So to your partner, I get it, right? But we're not here to select who changes their life. We're only here to let those hear the message who want to change their life.
Well, you just illustrated the power of storytelling, because I just think that's a wonderful story you just told, Bernie. And I mean, that's what I always tell people. The most important strategy when speaking is stop sharing your successes, start sharing your failures, because not everybody in your audience has succeeded, but they've all failed. And the more you share your own failures, the more your audience is going to start seeing themselves in you. And this is ultimately what you're trying to do to connect with an audience. And again, addressing small audiences. When I first started speaking, I had 2 speakers bureaus where I was doing full day trainings for $700 a day. Well, my public library asked me if I would do a free training. They're like, we're going to get 500 people to this training. I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. Well, 4 people showed up, Bernie. 2 of them were my realtors. The other 2 was a Hispanic couple that didn't speak a word of English. But I believe in giving 110%, so I did as much in Spanish as I could. We all laughed, had a great time. A week later, it turns out the Hispanic woman who was taking English classes at the Adult Literacy Center, she recommended me to do a 45-minute keynote for $4,000, which at the time was 6 times my speaking fee. Wow. Another example. I spoke last month in Montevideo, Uruguay, and this woman who hired me, she's been on my email list for 11 years. And so what that taught me, first of all, it taught me, dang, Danny, you're pretty persistent. That's pretty good. You kept with her for 11 years. But second of all, it really taught me that no often just means not yet.
I think failure, because you just mentioned the word failure, I think people focus so much on failure. Why is it that some people choose? Because I don't think anybody likes rejection. And I think that rejection, meaning if you try something, you get rejected. What is it about people, especially in the world of sales? Let's just use that because it's a rejection-based business. Why do you feel that people get so hung up on the failure side and not on the persistent side to success?
Yeah, they don't understand it's a numbers game. One of my coaches is a guy named Jack Canfield. He's a wonderful coach, and he has a saying. He says, SW, 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 SW. Some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting. Absolutely right. It's a numbers game. Everything is a numbers game. If you want to learn sales, talk to an ugly guy who has a gorgeous wife. Because what that tells me is he had persistence.
That's one of the funniest things. Well, he's probably perfected his presentation skills, I guess.
He's got a good shtick.
There's always this great saying, and it talks about going through these levels of success. And in the book I was mentioning to you, Dara Rutherford's book, Being the Solution, he's got another one, and it's a great read, and it's I've read it actually twice, and I'll probably do it again here very soon because it's such a powerful book. But not only does he talk about the be, do, have mentality, but he talks about the be, do, have, and then destroy, because once you've accomplished whatever set of goals that you've accomplished, Danny, he says that you have to actually crush that and create something new. Don't camp out on that too long. So, or I've said this before to my group, every level's another devil, which means that every level is a different set of challenges that everyone has to go through. What kind of advice can you give for those that are complacent? We like to use that word, a bit complacent. How do you pull people from a level of complacency to try to make that decision to go to the next level?
I despise complacency. If a person is complacent, I don't want to be anywhere near them. Like, you should always want to get better. When I'm training teachers, there's nothing that gets me more excited than seeing some 30-year veteran come up and I'm like, what are you doing here? And she's like, oh, I want to learn how to get better. Oh, surround me with people like that. You should always want to get better. I mean, Tiger Woods is the greatest golfer of all time. He had just won the Masters tournament at the youngest age ever by the largest margin. And what did he do? He hired a coach to have him relearn his swing. And for the next 18 months, he didn't win a single tournament. And everybody thought he had made the biggest mistake of his life. And then he became the first person to hold all 4 major trophies at the same time, the Tiger Slam. And he just became unstoppable. But that's a guy that's constantly trying to push the envelope. And he also understood the power of coaching. I mean, he has a mental coach. He has a driving coach. He has a putting coach. Maybe he should have hired a relationship coach, but that's another story. But I want to be, I mean, a person that's complacent, I have no interest in being around that person. You should always, the moment you stop learning, you start dying. And I can tell you this from experience, because I've had lots of wonderful coaches and mentors throughout my life. And the biggest people I know, if they're at some conference, they're always sitting in the front row and they take more notes than anybody else. And that's probably the person considered the expert. And I always say that's an important lesson. If this person's taking that many notes, then maybe you should start taking a lot more.
You know, I think, can I challenge you a little bit on the complacency conversation? Is that okay?
You can challenge me anytime.
But I want you to help me, because I might have the wrong mindset. And you're the mindset guy here. You're the one that talks to people about what goes on inside their head and their fear. So maybe you're going to coach me here a little bit. But I'm a believer that there's so much available out there to accomplish, and that no matter what we accomplish, we still think too small. Would you agree to that?
Completely agree.
And I understand that there's baby steps in the process, and in that. And I also believe, as Darren Rutherford says, talks about this be do have relationship, that destroy when you have the have, so you can then create something new and different. My belief is that we're always, all of us, are at some level of complacency because we are only working towards something that makes us just a little uncomfortable, which is a good thing, because that's a growth mindset, that we want to grow to the next level. But yet, are we really growing fast enough? And are we camping in? Even though we're growing, I guess the question is: even though we're growing, are we sending? For most of us, are we spending more time in complacency once growth happens?
I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. 2 of my coaches are Steve and Rob Schallenberger. They have a wonderful program called Becoming Your Best, and they do an exercise. I know it's not unique to them, but maybe a lot of people in your audience haven't heard about it. It's called the spokes in the wheel exercise, and so. I have their planner, and so one of the habits that's really changed my life is every Saturday morning I sit down with my planner and I review the previous week, and then I set my goals for the next week. And I have 7 different categories of goals. Now, again, former teacher, everything has to be alliterative, and so I have my focus goals, my fitness goals, my financial goals, my family goals, my faith goals, my fun goals, and my fulfillment goals. And so the spokes in the wheel exercise is you draw a circle on a piece of paper and you draw your 7 spokes: financial, faith, fun, all of those different things. And on each spoke, you give yourself a score of 0 to 10. So we'll do this with you right now. So Bernie, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, where would you consider yourself financially right now?
A 7.
Okay. Now, on a scale of 0 to 10, how about your fitness?
I'm going to give you a lot of the same answers. I'm going to say a 7 because it gives me room for improvement.
That's fine. How about with your family?
A 5.
Okay. How about with your faith?
A 6.
Okay. How about with fulfillment? These are things like you've always wanted to do in life.
A 3.
Okay. How about with, how about fun? Just it's entertainment for you.
Four.
Okay. How about with your focus, how you feel your focus is?
7.
Okay. I think I hit all 7 of those. And anybody can use, this is my 7. Some people can come up with anything. So now what you do is you connect those dots. And if you don't form a perfect circle, you're out of alignment. And that means, oh, wait a second. I'm spending all this time with my fitness, but I'm letting my faith go by the wayside. Or I'm having a lot of fun, but my finances aren't doing so well. And it's a really interesting exercise. It directly relates to what you're talking about with complacency, because you said something I loved. You said, well, a lot of these will be the same score. I'm like, great. That means you're not complacent. It means you're conscious of these different elements of your life. I mean, I actually had to fire a billionaire last week because he's a jerk, and I refuse to work with jerks. And he's a billionaire, so financially he's a 10, but he's 100 pounds overweight, so his fitness is probably at a 1. He's on wife number 3, so I wouldn't say, and he doesn't know his children very well. So people view people, this definition of success always drives me nuts. I'm like, well, I know people that, they don't have a lot of money, but gosh, at their funeral, they're going to have thousands of people. It's kind of like the bug guy. I love the bug guy story. I think that's fantastic. You have no idea the impact that you're making. A lot of times those are the people that are the most important people in our lives. And so I work with people and just getting them thinking about, well, what is success to you? Because there's basically 3 types of motivation in every audience I speak to. I call it the 20-year-olds, the 40-year-olds, and the 60-year-olds. So the 20-year-olds, they're all interested in boosting their income. And so I have to directly make sure I'm talking to those needs. But then there's also the 40-year-olds in the audience. The 40-year-olds, they've made their money, but they're not spending enough time with the family. They're starting to feel guilty. So what they're looking for is freedom. And then the 60-year-olds, they've done all of this, but now they're like, is this all there is to it? So they're really concerned about their impact in the world. So if you can craft a presentation where you're addressing those 3 types of motivation, income, freedom, and impact, then you're going to have a much more successful presentation. And so complacency, I think all of us are complacent. I completely agree with that. All of us can be doing better, and we should be challenging ourselves. And I think the start of that is to really be conscious of that, is, hey, I can be better. And if you keep on thinking that, and don't judge, Teddy Roosevelt said, comparison is the thief of joy. I completely agree with that. Don't compare yourself to other people. Compare yourself to you yesterday. Are you better than you were yesterday? Mm-hmm. If you can honestly say that every day, I think you're successful.
Let me ask you this question, because this stems from this wheel and doing our best to balance that out as we can. Let's talk a little bit about balance, life balance, work balance, spiritual balance, health balance, finance balance, all these kinds of things. How challenging is it to have that balance out for anybody who, let's say they're starting a business, they're in the middle of being an entrepreneur or solopreneur, whatever you want to call it, and they have a family and they're trying to work on their finances, right? Because I think you and I can both appreciate, because we were both broke at one point of our life, and so I had some very financial struggles also, and then I went into complete work mode, so that never happens to me again. Mm-hmm. And then your family life suffers, right? Your bank account grows potentially, but then your family life struggles, or your health struggles because you're spending so much time at work. So how hard is it for someone to create balance in their life in those areas?
Well, I don't know if you can honestly find balance, Bernie, because you're absolutely right. There's some times in your life where you're going to be, I don't know any startup person that's not working 20 hours a day. People say, oh, you got to work hard. You got to work smarter, not harder. I'm like, I'm telling you, the most successful people, they work smarter and harder. They work harder than anybody else. I mean, these people, you can't stop them. I think the exercise we just did is really important, though. Being conscious, like thinking, just reflect. Give yourself that half hour every Saturday morning to think about, I didn't really spend enough time with the family this past week. So this next week, I'm going to make that one of my priorities, which there was a great book, Essentialism by Greg McKeown. You don't have to read it because I already read it. I can tell you there was one line in that book that totally changed my life. He said, in Greek, the word priority can only be used in the singular. That changed my life, because every day I give myself one priority that has to get done. I can get other stuff done, but I have to get the priority done. You'll be amazed how much more efficient you are when you give yourself one priority a day. And so since I have my 7 different goals, I make sure that I have at least one, my priority every day represents one of those goals. So I'll have a day where this is a family goal day, is my priority, because I'm a person that loves lists, and I'll have 20 items on my list, and if I didn't accomplish all 20 of them, I consider the day a failure, which is really bad. That's not, you can't be a perfectionist. You can't be that hard, and all of us are our own worst critics, so don't be that hard. Or item number 20 on my list probably should have been the priority. I've been avoiding it, talking to that tax guy, or, making that appointment. And so I just think that having that consciousness is going to make, and I don't think there's anything to feel guilty about. If you are struggling financially and you're putting a lot of time into work, I think by all means you need to be putting a lot of time into work, taking care of your finances, but giving yourself that half hour or 1 hour every single week to just reflect. All right, I've been eating like a slob all week. I need to get my fitness in order, or I haven't been taking my walks. Gosh, I need to get back in that Bible study, because that always made me feel better for the week. Just think about these things, and don't be hard on yourself. People are always really hard on themselves. This is why I love coaching my people. Before I was talking to you, I was just coaching a client. I was on my daily thought walk on the phone with her, and she was being very critical of herself. And I'm like, you're not looking at your progress. Let's look at where you've been these last 3 months. And by the end of the call, she's like, oh, I always love talking to you. I'm like, well, this is, and I consider it a blessing, is I have two of my former roommates in college. One of them had a horrible thing happen recently, and Dave, my other roommate, he told him, he's like, well, why don't you call Danny? Because Danny will convince you, not only is it good that happened to you, it's probably the best thing ever happened to you. And I'm blessed. I have that positive attitude. I'm looking at the progress. I'm not giving myself this negative rating for guilt or whatever, because I can't control the past. I can only control the present.
I was working with a friend. I'll just say that. And I'm kind of a mentor to her, and she was running a company here in town, and so, or not here in town, but she was living up just not far from me, a couple hours. And so she was telling me about some challenges that she was having with the owner of this brokerage firm that she worked in, and that he was giving her a hard time about certain things and some of the activities that she was doing. And I didn't think what she was doing was when it was inappropriate in any way or legally had any issues. And so she called me about it, and I said, listen, you just go into his office and tell him, hey, listen, I'm your number one person here. And she's in the real estate business. She was a realtor. And I'm not going to stop doing that, because I know that what I'm doing is the right thing to do. And so anyways, I charged her all up, Danny, and I go, you go there and you just stake your claim of who you want to be and what you're all about. Well, the next morning I was at a disciple group breakfast, and my phone is blowing up at 6:30 in the morning. And I'm like, well, I'm not talking to her at 6:30 in the morning. I'm in a disciple group, right? I'm focusing on the Lord and what's important. And so when I get in the car about 7:30, I call her back, and she's like, you're not going to believe what happened last night. I'm like, lay it on me. She goes, well, I did exactly what you told me, and he fired me. And I said, awesome. That's so great. Now look what you get a chance to do. You get a chance to go out and start your own company. And she goes, really? I'm like, what a blessing. You weren't happy. He wasn't happy. You staked your claim. He didn't like it. Shame on him, right? Because he just lost his absolute best salesperson in his entire company. That was a bad choice on his part. I said, so what are you going to do now? And she goes, I'm going to go get my broker's license, and I'm going to start my own business. Danny, here's the fun part of the story, and I think this is where the listeners will understand. Even with massive adversity, she dealt with frustration and anger in the relationship for months. She stood up for herself. I may have given her a little bit of confidence to do that and told her she probably wasn't going to get fired. I wouldn't have fired somebody who came in under those circumstances, but the broker didn't like it. And now she runs a very thriving, successful business in Kentucky, so much greater than she ever was before. And so what I love about the story you told and about the adversity of things, sometimes they work in your favor. I love what Tony Robbins always says. And I was like, listen, don't look at things as something bad happening to me. Look at it as it's working in my favor. And what is happening in my favor that causes this to happen? Would you agree that you've had people like that where negative things have happened and then they've just turned it into something really positive?
Yeah, you and I know. I mean, the equation is there's the event plus response equals the outcome. And so your response to that woman is fantastic. Hey, this is great. Now you get to go out on your own, and you got her thinking in a totally different point of view. She's like, I didn't think of it from that perspective. I mean, this is our job, is getting people to believe in things that they don't believe in. How do I get you to believe you're capable of greatness? Every expert started as an amateur. I mean, I promise you, every kindergartner feels nervous on their first day of first grade. But after a few days, anybody that enters the Oval Office on the very first day they're president, they don't feel like they belong there. And it takes them a little bit of time, and then they start feeling, Division I athletes, I don't belong here. Eventually they start to see themselves that way. And this is where we're here to kind of push people a little bit faster than they might be comfortable with. And I think those emotions you were talking about, frustration and anger and these are things that are good for you. The one emotion that to me has no purpose whatsoever is worry. What does worry do for you? I mean, in my men's Bible study, we always talk about turn your worries into prayers. I completely agree with that. Worry doesn't serve you. I think of that movie, Bridge of Spies, and Tom Hanks is talking to the guy that's he's a spy, and he looks at the guy and he's like, "Aren't you worried?" And the guy looks up, he's like, "Oh, will that help?" I just love the way he says it so innocently. I'm like, yeah, when does worry help you? It doesn't help you, so why do it?
Yeah, I think I read something about worry, like 99% of everything you worry about never comes to fruition
Absolutely.
anyway, right? And like my friend who got fired, what choice did she have? She had two choices. She got fired, so she could either curl up in a ball and cry and then figure out something later in her life, or she could just stand up at that moment, regardless of how painful that was, and then move herself forward. And that's the hardest part, I think, about emotions. Let me ask you this question about emotions. I heard something recently, and I don't know where I heard it. It was probably a month or two ago. And it says that emotions obviously are overrated and that people act on emotion versus logic. Can you share anything about that? Like, people get so stuck in what has happened to them in their past. They play like a little victim mentality, which is why they can't do something. So they live in this emotion. And I can give you, I'll tell you a little story after I hear your response, but how do we help people who get so stuck in their emotion that they get paralyzed to move forward?
Yeah, so, and this is something that Jimmy and I are teaching our clients all the time, is basically, I'm going to be very stereotypical and say every audience has the married couple. I call the husband is Joe Friday and the wife is Julia Roberts. Joe Friday, he's the guy sitting there, he wants just the facts. How much is this going to cost? What do I got to do? How long is it going to take? And a very clear, well-crafted presentation is going to have that clear call to action to satisfy Joe Friday's questions. But if you just address the logic, you've ignored Julia Roberts, the wife. She doesn't care how much it costs. She just wants to feel good. You know, I listen to Bernie's podcast because I always feel good when I listen to Bernie. This is like the greatest thing ever. And so that's the power of emotion is, you know, just look at voting habits for people. People don't necessarily vote for the most qualified candidate. They vote for the person that they connect with. Yeah. And it's an important thing to pay attention to. Whenever when we're working with politicians, I always give politicians a hard time. I always say, you ever notice that nobody middle class has ever run for president? They always grew up in a log cabin. And the reason why they're telling that story is they want you to connect with them. Oh, I've had the adversity that you've had, and I'm going to help this country. I mean, that's the story that you have to tell. So now I'm actually more interested in your story. Tell me it, Bernie.
No, I guess so. I have somebody that I know who went through a divorce years and years ago, 13, 14 years ago. And constant conversation about how mistreated they were, year in and year out and year in and year out, and what happened and blah, 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 whatever. Now, the whole time, this person's single for 13 years. And finally, after 13 years, I said to the individual, I said, "You're still married to that person." And she looked at me and goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I'm like, "You bring so much emotion in what happened 13 years ago. When are you going to make the choice to emotionally divorce yourself from them, because you're already emotionally divorced? You're emotionally married. You're legally divorced. You're emotionally married, and you carry the burden of how this person treated you for 13 years. Is it time to hatchet that relationship off?" Now, to be fair, she hasn't. That was 2 years ago. She still hasn't done it. So now it's been 15 years, and it's the drama. And so I've always asked myself, what does it take for someone to look at the situation and stop being the victim? Because this is a victim relationship. Stop being a victim and just say, I'm going to go move forward with my life, because that was 13 years ago, or in this case, yesterday maybe. I got fired yesterday. Today I got to figure it out. And this person now has wasted 15 years of their life trying to move forward to have a better life, and just keeps getting pulled back into the emotional drama that has gone on in their head. I think that with the work I do, and maybe even with the work you do, that we probably see a lot of people that live their life based on what happened in their past.
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's one of the things I think really distinguishes Jimmy and me from most of the so-called speaking coaches out there, because I see so many people, what they teach people to do is, oh, we want you to talk about your most traumatic experience because that's going to connect to the audience. I'm like, there's 3 reasons why I don't teach people to do that. First of all, Bernie, the world just survived a global pandemic. Everybody's had bad stuff happen to them. I don't think we need more sad stories. I think we need more stories of hope and optimism. Second of all, what Coach Jimmy and I take our clients through is we're teaching you how to create what we call a well-crafted story. Politicians would call it their stump speech. You can call it peanut butter and jelly. It doesn't matter what you call it. This is a presentation that you're going to deliver again and again, and it's going to become so ingrained in your memory, it flows from your mouth like the Pledge of Allegiance or the Lord's Prayer. You don't have to think about it. This is how you're going to introduce yourself to new audiences. Well, do you really want to tell the worst story of your life again and again? I mean, I want you having fun on stage. I got a friend, his daughter was killed in a school shooting. He's told that story over 1,000 times to audiences. I have no idea how he does that, Bernie. Like, it takes a special person, I guess. And third, and this is where people get angry with me, I have one objective when I'm on stage. I want you to leave feeling better than when you came in. I want you laughing, smiling, happy. I think there's something admirable about that as a simple objective. I believe these people that tell the same sad story again and again, by the 20th time they're telling it, those are crocodile tears, and now they're being manipulative. And I'm not saying it's not an effective sales technique. It's a very effective sales technique. But I personally don't want to have to take a shower after I get off stage because I just manipulated my audience. There are ethical ways to get people to want to do business with you. And so I believe in your approach. I just feel so sad for that woman that she has this great coach, but it goes back to when the student is ready, the teacher appears. She's not ready. She's chosen to live in her horror for the rest of her life. And I mean, and there's a lot of people that do that, you know. It's the, I mean, I think you and I are both Tiggers, but we're surrounded by a lot of Eeyores. I mean, I come home from work, I'm like, hey, honey, how was your day? And she's like, thanks for noticing me. It's like, it's your choice. That's the one. I mean, all you have to do is read Man's Search. What was it? Man's Search for
Man's Search for
yeah,
Meaning.
Viktor Frankl, and he said that was the one thing he could control in the concentration camp was his attitude. Oh, man. I mean, if you're not listening to that's an important story to hear. I'm like, man, that was powerful to me. I'm like, you know what? I can control my attitude, and you and I both have had some financial horrors that happened to us, and we could have. I mean, it's a Shawshank Redemption. It's Red talking to Andy's like, you can get busy living or you can get busy dying. A lot of people have chosen to get busy dying. You have a choice. Let's look at this in a different, you know, a lot of people don't know where the term Pollyanna comes from. It's a great movie from the 60s, Pollyanna. And Pollyanna always has a positive attitude, and she's British. And she's like, when I was in the orphanage, I wanted a dolly for Christmas. And instead, I got crutches. And I thought, how lucky I am not to need them. Look at the positive, man.
talk about talk about the positive side of things, right? I mean, I love that. You know, when we do our little gratitude circle in our company here, people always like, oh, I don't know what I'm grateful for. Like sometimes it'll stump people to come around because we do it every morning, 5 days a week, and they'll go around and it's like, what am I grateful for? And they have like a hard time. I'm like, let's just come up with some easy stuff. Like you're alive, you're healthy, you have great kids. I mean, it's easy. Hey, I had one just this morning. I loved it, and I said, they got to them and said, I'm so grateful for coffee.
Yeah.
I'm like, sometimes it's just coffee. Because we can sit there and talk about, well, it's raining outside and it's cold or it's ugly or whatever, because winter's, you know, kind of around the corner for us all over here. And so you look at it and go, yeah, but what a blessing of all the rain that's come down, because it's going to be really green in the spring. That's awesome, right? What a great celebration that we get to have during this Thanksgiving and the holiday season, Christmas holiday season. So you can be grateful for anything in your life versus being, you know, a little Eeyore-ish kind of mentality.
Well, I'm grateful for the technology that allows us to have this interview. I mean, COVID, there was all kinds of bad things, but it made me appreciate being able to go to restaurants, not having to wear a mask all the time. It made me appreciate that we have technology that we can still connect with people without being physically present. I mean, I don't know what we would have done without this type of communication.
Yeah, I mean, doing this from the distance that we are and to be able to communicate like we do. And, you know, COVID brought a lot of interesting things, didn't it? A lot of tech. I mean, it got a lot of people to work from home, right? We all want to talk about the bad things about COVID. And of course, it was bad. But a lot of good things come from things that are bad. And I think that when we look at our life and we look at things that have happened to us, and people ask me all the time, hey, would you ever change anything? Well, I'm going to answer two ways. Yeah, I mean, there are some things that happened that I probably wished hadn't happened. But if I really look at it and go, it had to happen in order for me to be who I am today. And so not really, because I'd rather be who I am today and have the mindset that I have today and the ability to take the struggles that I did have and share those with other people without those stories. One of my pastor that I have at church that runs the church here locally, he's got an interesting story where he was a drug addict, a heroin addict. And anyways, got saved by the Lord and now leads one of the largest churches in the country. And, you know, he tells a story every year, kind of goes up and tells a story. And what a great testimony of, hey, I was down and out. I didn't believe in the Lord. I was lost. I became a drug addict. I was a drug dealer. I've been in and out of rehabs, you know, several different times. And it wasn't until that I actually found the Lord that I actually was able to be saved by his grace. And then now he stands up on stage in front of thousands and thousands of people every Sunday and on TV and does a lot of prison ministries and things like that. And you look at that going, that story is saving lives. He had to go through all of that.
Well, it's when I was at my lowest. I mean, I don't want to get preachy to people. I encourage people to read the Bible because it's just fascinating stories, and I read it differently than other people. I'm laughing half the time because you know, I'm like, oh, Jesus is just a frustrated teacher. The apostles don't figure anything out. He's like, all right, let me tell you a story. Maybe you'll get it this time. And he just cracks me. That's what I always tell people. The power of storytelling is, I bet you 9 out of 10 non-Christians are familiar with the story of the prodigal son. They're familiar with the story of the Good Samaritan. They're familiar with the story of David and Goliath. But I'll also bet you 9 out of 10 Christians can't tell you the 10 Commandments. And the reason is it wasn't presented as a story. Instead, it was a PowerPoint presentation with 10 bullet points, and people forget them. And the stories in the Bible, when I was at my lowest, it's Genesis 50:20, where Jacob passes away, and Joseph's brothers are freaking out. They're like, oh, no. We left Joseph for dead. We sold him. Oh, my gosh. Now comes the vengeance day. And they come up to Joseph. They're like, hey, Joe, before Dad died, he said, you're not supposed to take vengeance on all that bad stuff we did to you. And Joseph's really cool. He's like, oh, no, man. Everything you meant for evil, God meant for good. And I can hardly wait when I'm sitting there with God one day, and he's just laughing. He's like, "Oh, you remember when you were like so down here? I knew the ending, and you just didn't know all the good things that were going to happen." He's going to be laughing at me, and so that's the way I choose to live my life is learning from these things. And I agree with you. Life is too beautiful to live in regrets. The fact that you're above ground, you better be grateful.
Yeah. We all need to live a little more like Joseph, don't we?
Absolutely.
Where we can have a lot of bad things happen to us, and just because of his perseverance and his belief in the Lord, here, he ended up showing us all, right, what that kind of thought process can be.
If you can put me in touch with your pastor, that would be great, because my latest book is called Convicted. And so this is a book I will make no money off of. It's 52 stories of people that were in prison that found Christ while they were in prison. And my goal is to distribute it to prisoners around the world. Great stories, like Paul Harvey-like stories, but it shows them like, hey, your story's still being written. Don't let the worst thing that you ever did determine the rest of your life. And so I'm just trying to spread the word about that. And I'm not one of these preachy Christians. I don't have the long beard growing the Jesus. I don't have the long beard driving the Jesus van. But I'm more like Joel Osteen, like what you were talking about, like with the bug guy. I'm like, wow, that to me, that's the beautiful testimony. Is like people that get to watch. Bernie's pretty cool. I wonder what it is that makes Bernie cool. Maybe I should learn a little bit about his faith and things like that. So I commend you with all that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, we have a platform here, right, that we can help people at all different levels, and the Lord puts us an opportunity to share things, and whoever receives it, receives it. Danny, I want to say thank you. What's the best way anybody can get a hold of you?
Well, as a thank you for having me on, Bernie, and having to endure all my stories, I wanted to give everybody a freebie. So if you go to freestoryguide.com, guide like a tour guide, freestoryguide.com, I'm going to give everybody their own complimentary, well-crafted story blueprint. What this is the actual process that Coach Jimmy and I take our clients through to help you create your well-crafted story. What this does for you is it takes the guesswork out of where do I put this story and why am I putting it here? And what this means for you is you have a system that can convert audiences into actual clients. You can get that at freestoryguide.com. And again, Bernie, I just want to thank you so much for all that you do. You inspire me, and this was a delight. I actually enjoyed your stories immensely.
Well, we telling the stories helps inspire other people. So we'll just keep telling the stories. Have a good attitude towards it. And Danny, I wanted to say thank you so much for such a great interview and inspiring all of our people who watch. And maybe we can do it again here soon.
Sounds great. Thanks for all you do. God bless you, Bernie.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.